The next day, Duke surprised Uriam with an invitation to the emperor's birthday. However, apprehension set in as she worried about judgment at this royal event. Duke reassured her, but Uriam still feared potential humiliation. Eventually she agreed, only to realize the celebration was in 3 months, not enough time to master dance and etiquette. During a study session with her advisor, Ariam told him about Duke's invitation. Desperate for guidance, she pressed the advisor, who bluntly admitted he couldn't do much. Undeterred, she insisted, and he reluctantly agreed to look into it. After their study session, the advisor spilled all the beans to Duke, who, in his typical grumpy fashion, declared that Uriam thinks way too much. The advisor, trying to be helpful, suggested bringing in Elsa for etiquette lessons. But that idea didn't sit well with Duke, who promptly told him to stay in his lane. The advisor, sensing the gravity of the situation, Nelton apologized, prompting Duke to warn him about the watchful eyes and the need to be more careful. Uriam's next study session started a tad early, with a mission to prepare for the upcoming birthday bash. After completing a chapter, the advisor instructed Ariam to head to a room on the second-floor east wing. As she explored, a lady named Evangeline and a nerdy-looking boy, Doran, introduced themselves. Apparently, Evangeline was there to teach Uriam the palace waltz. Once Evangeline left, another lady stepped in, ready to school Uriam in palace etiquette. Come nighttime, Uriam's back felt like she'd been in a gaming marathon with a 20-something gamer. Tired and aching, she realized Duke wasn't a furry, treating her like a pet while they chatted. Pope made a grand entrance, and Duke's expression instantly plummeted. He promptly instructed Uriam to play hostess and entertain Pope in the hall. Pope, on the other hand, unleashed his inner bargain bin counselor on Uriam, asking about her feelings in the palace, dropping the bomb that he too suffered under the missing advisor. Pope attempted some budget therapy. Before the conversation got too absurd, Duke swooped in and sent Ariam off to rest. Ignoring Duke's advice, Uriam sneakily headed to his office and stumbled upon a smuggling case report. Caught up in reading, she lost track of time. As the night dragged on, Uriam, still wide awake, practiced her walking technique in her room. Duke happened to stroll by and spotted her, a grin spreading across his face. Maybe the sight of her perfecting her walk was the unexpected highlight of his day. The next day, Duke decided to take Uriam to a jewelry shop to flex his diamond knowledge. He showed her a bunch of sparkly rocks and asked her to spot the difference. But surprise, Uriam couldn't play the spot the diamond game. While Duke disappeared into the back room with the owner, the shop lady popped up like a jack-in-the-box to greet Ariam. Outside, Duke, the high and mighty, surprisingly helped Uriam onto the carriage. Uriam raised an eyebrow, thinking it's not every day you see a Duke doubling as a personal chauffeur. But wait, Duke had an excuse ready. He claimed Uriam was as fragile as a bubble, and he didn't want her spraining an ankle. Smooth move, Duke. But Uriam found it a bit odd she didn't sign up for a Duke and a half. The next morning marked the grand finale of Uriam's dance preparation. And guess who decided to join the dance floor? None other than the Duke himself. To Uriam's surprise, the Duke had some moves. Turns out he wasn't just good at ruling a kingdom, but he could cha-cha like a champ. After a bit of twirling and spinning, they headed to the Duke's office. In his majestic office, the Duke handed Uriam the task of playing the letter ninja again. But amidst the cutting and snipping, the Duke couldn't help but wonder why Uriam seemed as slender as a stick. His frustration bubbled up. He just wanted her to be happy, and her changed attitude had him scratching his head. Later, Ariam received a letter from the prince. It was an apology letter, and the prince wanted to meet her after the birthday gala to propose something shiny and new. Duke, not thrilled about the prince's sudden interest, declared he'd handle the situation personally. At the gala, Duke and Ariam hit the dance floor. They were twirling like they were auditioning for a ballroom dancing reality show. But just as things were getting interesting, someone interrupted the Duke. While Duke was away, Uriam decided to sip on some wine like a sophisticated lady. However, the elegance was short-lived. As she started coughing and vomiting blood, the whole place collectively gasped. Talk about stealing the spotlight. At the party, in a whirlwind of drama, Duke swooped in like a superhero and caught Uriam as she dramatically pointed at the waiter, blaming him for the poisonous drink. Duke, not one for subtlety, charged at the waiter like a rhino on a mission, delivering a royal beatdown and calling in the cavalry to arrest the miscreant. Escorted to a room, Uriam looked like she had 1 HP left dangerously low on the life bar. Duke had a light bulb moment. He did a wrist-slicing maneuver and started rubbing his blood and Uriam's together like some bizarre potion-making ritual. Lo and behold, it worked. Uriam regained consciousness, probably questioning Duke's first aid techniques. Duke reassured Uriam that justice would be served to the poison-peddling scoundrel and ordered her to take a royal nap. Meanwhile, Duke stormed outside, where fate had a little meet-cute planned. With none other than the prince himself. Already simmering with anger, Duke unleashed a tirade on the prince, demanding an explanation for the letter. Shenanigans. The prince, playing the "I'm the innocent one" card, claimed it was just an apology. Duke, not buying it, punched a vase nearby, probably a priceless antique. After a heated exchange of words, Duke left the scene, leaving the prince in a state of confusion. Upon reaching the palace, Duke tucked Uriam into her bed, playing the role of the perfect caretaker. The next morning, Uriam woke up, a tad bewildered to find Duke chilling by her bedside. He confessed he was worried she might have pulled a Sleeping Beauty, which made Uriam feel like royalty. Duke, with genuine concern, explained it was akin to his childhood fear of his mom snoozing permanently. Cut to the chase. Duke spilled the beans to Uriam about the halfway point of blood transfer. Furious, he confronted Pope about why her blood wasn't purified entirely. The conversation escalated into a heated debate about black blood, light, and all things vampire. Miriam, caught in the crossfire, sat there utterly confused. Duke, not one for subtlety, yelled at her, demanding if she was aware that vampire blood coursed through her veins. Pope, grinning like a Cheshire cat, locked eyes with Uriam. With a mischievous twinkle in her eye, Uriam revealed to Duke a shared secret only the two of them were privy to. She spun a tale for Duke about getting smacked by a carriage, and Pope chimed in with the revelation that her body was a bit of an empty vessel. According to Pope, people could be categorized as either dark or light, but Uriam defied such labels. She was like an empty soda can, free. Duke connected the dots. The next day, Duke embarked on a mission to unmask the villain behind Arian's carriage encounter. The waiter spilled the beans. It was none other than Ian Fraynacker in a powwow with Logan. Duke decided they'd relocate right after the birthday gala. Meanwhile, Uriam, casually reading the newspaper, nearly choked on her coffee when she stumbled upon paparazzi headlines about her and Duke being the hottest gossip in town that night. In a move that could be misconstrued, Duke summoned Uriam to his room. However, it was not a steamy rendezvous, but a delivery, a page revealing that Ian Franagar had been caught with a forbidden book and was due for a date with the Emperor and the Council. Uriam, overjoyed at Duke's revenge plot, mentally high-fived him. The following day, Duke and Uriam set off for the estate, and upon arrival, Duke, with the grandeur of a royal pronouncement, assigned Ariam the prestigious role of official document sender and receiver. Ariam entered her room feeling like she landed in the coziest cloud ever. A bath was ready, but Uriam, not quite used to royal pampering, felt a tad out of place. The maid transformed her from regular human to royalty with a salon session fit for a queen. As the night rolled in, the royal estate party kicked off, and Uriam was all dolled up like a princess. A royal with a femboy flair named Ashel came over, flashing a charming smile and trying to win her over. Duke, feeling a sudden surge of jealousy, warned Ashel to keep his distance. Looks like someone woke up on the grumpy side of the royal bed. Uriam sat next to Duke as he grabbed the mic to announce his grand return. The royal table looked like a wine lover's paradise. But Duke, being the responsible adult in the room, shut that down real quick, forgetting that in vampire years she was still in the sippy cup phase. Uriam and her grape juice-induced haze got a bit tipsy. Duke's attempts to play the sober coach failed miserably. He finally gave up and decided to play the role of the babysitter. Carrying a giggly and chatty Uriam, Duke escorted her to her room. She was blabbering about who knows what, probably the secrets of the universe or her favorite snack. Duke, like a pro, tucked her into bed. In her tipsy state, Ariam got a bit emotional and asked Duke what she'd accomplished during their time together. Duke told her she changed him in his whole royal routine. Ariam drifted off into dreamland with a smile on her face, leaving Duke to contemplate life choices. The next morning, Uriam woke up with her blanket, looking like a skyscraper at sunrise. Uriam woke up with a big smile on her face because Duke dropped the bomb last that she's super special to him. In the library, Duke turned into a vampire chemist, cooking up a secret recipe to turn Uriam into a bloodsucker like him. Duke, the master chef of vampire conversion, started spicing up Uriam's meals with a dash of his own blood. Uriam, clueless about the behind-the-scenes drama, went off to her office. Ariam headed back to her room, feeling a bit down because she hadn't laid eyes on Duke all day. Meanwhile, Duke was in vampire lab mode. A maid swooped in and announced dinner time, guiding Uriam to a fancy room with a glass window. Lo and behold, Duke was there, looking paler than a ghost. Uriam figured Duke might need a refill of that red stuff soon. The idea of Duke sipping on someone else's blood made Uriam feel a mix of queasy and jealous. So, being the smooth talker she is, she asked if they could make this dinner for two-thing a regular deal. Duke, with his pale but polite face, agreed to the proposal. The next day, Ariam got a mysterious package from a tram, and the royal smarty pants revealed that it was from a swanky place called Ballatine. He went on about flowers and beauty while Uriam searched for Duke to deliver the goods. Unfortunately, Duke was MIA, so the smarty pants suggested leaving him a note. Uriam jotted down a message, but the smarty pants got a chuckle, thinking it sounded a bit too steamy. Meanwhile, in another corner of the story, Millard was counting down the days, holding a mysterious black potion like he was waiting for a cosmic sale. Back in the library, Irene was scratching her head, wondering why Duke agreed to all those emperor terms. Way back when advisors tried to clear things up, then boom, Duke walked in asking about that steamy note. Off they went to retrieve the mysterious package, and with Duke strolling beside her, Ariam turned into a blushing mess. Then the plot thickened when Duke handed her a super top-secret package. Drumroll, please. Turns out it was just a brochure from a summer clothing store. Duke, being all mysterious Sigma male, told her to pick out her summer wardrobe but made it clear she's footing the bill. Sugar daddy alert or not, the clothes and the brochure were practically on a clearance sale. Ariam, wide-eyed, probably thought Duke was being overly generous, but oh no, Duke got it all wrong, thinking she found the prices too high. Ready for the superhero move, Duke declared he'd make the store drop their prices even more. Uriam had to be the voice of reason, telling him it's already cool. Then came dinner fashionably late, and Ariam couldn't help but wonder why they were having an eBay dinner party after everyone else had ghosted the dining room. In between bites, she dropped the bomb. When are my fab clothes arriving? Duke's jealousy radar going off, Duke asked. Who's the lucky person she's dressing up for? Uriam, cool as a cucumber. Shut that down, saying it's all for her own fabulous self. Post-meal, the server slid over some mysterious pills. Duke revealed they were the ultimate poison protection pills. Uriam, skeptical but game, gulped them down, and with a twinkle in her eye, bright and early, Isabel transformed Uriam into a picnic-ready queen. While brushing her hair, little Uriam's tummy rumbled and she wanted a snack. But Isabel wasn't having any of it, fearing Uriam might end up looking like Big Show from WWE. Apparently, ladies don't chow down, or so Isabel claimed. Ariam was shocked. Did she just get called a lady? All dolled up, Ariam sashayed into the hall, and there stood Duke, looking like he just discovered a secret treasure. The carriage ride to the picnic spot was like a nerdy first date, with awkward compliments flying left and right. Valitinen, the picnic destination, turned out to be a field of dreams covered in gorgeous flowers. Also, a bunch of servants and maids were on the picnic. Duke and Ariam strutted through the flowery wonderland. Uriam excused herself to whip up a flower ring for Duke in the fields. She slid it on his finger, and voila. Duke was over the moon. In the end, it turned out to be a wholesome picnic. Back at the estate, Ariam discovered some letters that smelled like a flower shop on steroids. She turned into Sherlock Holmes and confronted the estate royal about the fragrance mystery. Dodging the question like a pro, he ninja-dashed away, leaving Uriam with more questions than answers. She handed him the letters, but he casually tossed them into the basket, setting off Uriam's curiosity alarm. With a magnifying glass in hand, Uriam peeked into the basket and, surprise, found a love letter from someone named Rosanna to Duke. She got jealous seeing that the letters from Rosanna kept flooding in, and so did Ariam's jealousy. At dinner, she looked rough and worried, probably due to the mystery love notes. Duke noticed and asked, but Ariam, pulling a classic move, claimed she was just tired. The next day, the estate royal played Cupid and granted Uriam permission to dive into the love letter saga. She sprinted, opened the letter, and oh boy, it was like reading a text version of a Playboy magazine. Jealousy over 9,000 that evening, Ariam pulled the "I'm sick" card to skip dinner with Duke. Little did she know, Duke was worried sick about her. He played detective, caught her red-handed strolling the hallway, and without saying a word, knew she was avoiding him. The next day, Duke decided to dive into the Rosanna drama and read the letters himself. But surprise, surprise, he didn't tell the estate royal. The estate royal, sensing Duke's cluelessness, had to play detective and informed him that Uriam was feeling blue because of a classic case of jealousy. Duke, being Duke, assumed it was just a one-sided crush from his end. Meanwhile, Ariam was stuck in a love letter tornado, unable to focus on anything. Fast forward to dinner that night, and Duke revealed it to Ariam. He took charge and told her he handled the Rosanna situation by sending her a rejection letter. Turns out, some random human who barely knows Duke wrote a love letter, and Duke was not having it. Then Irene dropped a bomb of her own. She asked Duke about Sol, the supposed god of their world. Duke, the bearer of truths, shattered her hopes by revealing Sol was just a metaphorical light, not a wish-granting deity. Ouch. The next morning, in the midst of Isabel making Uriam fabulous, Uriam sought advice on confessing love. Isabel, the love guru, dished out some wisdom, and Uriam took notes. At the dining table, Uriam tried to play it cool. Uriam, being the curious soul, asked if Duke had a wish since he was folding those origami birds. Duke revealed, confessing he thought Sol wouldn't grant Ariam's wishes, so he was hoping the cranes could work some magic. Ariam, emotionally overwhelmed, dropped her fork upon hearing this heartfelt revelation. Grateful, she thanked Duke, who, being a humble soul, insisted he was just trying. Taking inspiration from Rosanna, Ariam decided to write Duke a love letter. However, tension hit her like a ton of bricks, and she couldn't come up with a single word. It took her an entire night to compile a letter. In a bold move, she handed it over to the royal estate, gave copies to the maid and advisor, and ordered a letter delivery extravaganza to Duke. Fast forward a few hours, and as Uriam was returning to her office, Duke came rushing in like a rom-com hero, embracing her tightly. Turns out he got the letter, a declaration of Uriam's love in written form. So there they were, wrapped up in a tight hug, and Duke spilled the love beans. He promised Uriam that he'd be her knight in shining armor, ready to protect her from any drama life throws at them. Ariam, being the independent adult she is, wanted to earn her own cash. Duke reluctantly agreed to let Ariam keep her work mojo, but fear not, he shifted gears and started plotting their wedding. The next day, Duke showed up at Ariam's office and the air got thick with romance. They were all touchy-touchy, doing the whole lovey-dovey dance. But guess who crashed the party? The estate royal. Barging in like a drama queen, she scolded Duke for not keeping his lovey-dovey moments in check during work hours. Back in his room, Duke, feeling like a love-struck teenager, worried about being too pushy, he popped some sleeping pills, hoping not to disturb Uriam during her work. Uriam woke him up, and they had a cute romantic moment over breakfast. Duke, attempting to be charming, asked Uriam out on a boat date. So, Uriam agreed to Duke's boat date plan. On the big trip day, Ariam was dolled up and ready to roll, leaving Duke in total awe. They hopped into the carriage, cruising toward their boating adventure. During the ride, Ariam decided to school Duke in the finger-counting game, but he was basically the losing champion, so she came up with a fun punishment, a little wrist tap for the loser. Duke wasn't a fan, proposing an "I love you" confession instead. Finally, they reached the boating spot. Back at the estate, the gossip mill was churning about Duke and Uriam. Some folks were cheering for them, while others were waving the no-go flag drama alert at the estate. After a fun day of boating, Duke and Uriam landed at the Basil family's place, where the hosts were in a room. Dilemma. The Basils wondered if Duke and Uriam should bunk together or get separate sleeping spaces at dinner. Just as Uriam was about to dig in, Duke, the ultimate food taster, checked her meal for any sneaky poison. After dinner, the ladies brainstormed about Uriam and Duke's night setup. Isabel, taking charge of Uriam's makeover, spilled the beans that they'd be roommates for the night. Uriam, at a sprightly 20, got a tad worried about the whole sleeping arrangements. No one's trying to catch a case here. As Isabel pampered Uriam and sorted out her hair, she dropped the bomb about the shared room plan. Nervous but compliant, Uriam was led to the room where Duke was already playing possum. When she entered, he pulled a fake sleep stunt. Uriam planted a goodnight kiss, and just when she thought the drama was over, Duke pulled off a surprise. "I'm awake," move, and returned the favor with a smooch. Duke, realizing he'd jumped the gun, sprinted out of the room in embarrassment. He decided to crash in another room for the night, probably thinking he needed a timeout. The next day, Ariam gave Duke the cold shoulder. Poor guy was fretting big time. Uriam and Isabel were hanging out in the garden, and Isabel, being the peacemaker, asked if the two lovebirds had a spat. Uriam just chuckled it off, but Isabel knew better and begged her to patch things up with Duke. As they left the garden, Duke finally mustered the courage to say sorry, but guess what? Uriam had already pulled a vanishing act. Later, on the carriage ride back to their estate, Duke spilled the apologies, admitting he acted like a total goofball. Back at the estate late at night, Duke was in his office going through his stash of mysterious black liquid, the stuff he'd been giving Uriam. Now Uriam, poor thing, was basically experiencing Duke's childhood nightmares in her dreams. And trust me, it wasn't a walk in the park. Duke knew that turning a Riam into a vampire was a one-way street. No U-turns allowed. But Uriam, being the smart cookie she is, had her suspicions. She sensed the vampire makeover plan but decided to play it cool, waiting for Duke to spill the immortal beans. Meanwhile, Ariam was juggling pros and cons like a circus performer. Duke, a socially awkward vampire maker, didn't exactly shine in the boyfriend department, yet she decided to cut him some slack, giving him a final shot at redemption if he messed up. She had a vampire card ready to play eternal silence. In the midst of her contemplation, Duke barged into her room. Ariam, with a raised eyebrow, fired questions about her impending vampire status. Then she pulled out the big guns, channeling her inner drama queen. She demanded more of Duke's mysterious black liquid, playing the girlfriend on her period card. You know, the classic move. So Duke figured out that Ariam caught wind of his whole vampire-making scheme. He chickened out from coming clean and did a confused lap around the estate. Poor guy was sweating bullets, worrying if Uriam would go all Hulk on him. After some internal pep talk, Duke mustered the courage to face the moody Uriam again. She was standing there giving him the stink eye. He mumbled a sorry, but Uriam wasn't having it. She demanded the classic move. "Get on your knees, mister." So there's Duke on his knees, spilling his feelings. He spilled that he didn't want her to kick the bucket and was desperate to make her happy before knowing about her sacredness. He was just a guy worried about his girl's mortality. He spilled about humans being fragile and having short lives. Like, was that a personal attack? Anyway, Duke went on about loving her, not wanting her to croak, and deciding darkness infusion was the cure. He was willing to go to extremes to keep her, blinded by the hope of eternal togetherness. Ariam softened up, probably realizing Duke wasn't just brewing trouble. She hugged him, dropping the wisdom bomb that he should never pull a stunt like that without her consent. Duke, grateful for the mercy, promised to consult her on major life decisions from now on. Then Duke, ever the smooth talker, pitched the vampire life. As the VIP passed to safety in their dangerous world, Urium argued that life's beauty lies in its expiration date. Duke, persistent as a fly at a picnic, insisted on eternity together. Urium decided she won't join the vampire club, and instead, she asked Duke about his biggest worry. With her staying human, Duke revealed that he feared vengeful humans might target her to get back at him. Then Duke proposed to marry her. When she's rocking granny vibes, he declared that wrinkles and all don't bother him. He just wanted that Granny Pete sass talk about commitment. Duke swore to smash any humans who dared mess with Urium. Before she hit the big 100, Urium, touched by the pledge, hugged him and told him to bring on the revenge if needed. Duke promised to unleash chaos if anything happened. Now, Duke believed Pope could cure Urium, but warned her it might sting a bit. Later that night, Pope arrived, but he was a bit puzzled by the dark vibes in the air. When he realized what Duke had done to Urium, he unleashed a big brother level of scolding, probably louder than when someone messes with his PS5 controller. After the verbal storm, Duke assured Urium that Pope would work his magic to save her.
Love the manhwa? Subscribe for more. Your support makes it all possible. Hit subscribe now!